Good afternoon. Thank you for listening in to our live stream today. We're going to talk about content marketing again, part two. Last week we discussed video marketing and really the key metrics and the importance of having that implemented into your marketing strategy. Today we're going to talk about a different component of content marketing, and that's email marketing. So I am Morgan Doyle with Marketing Eye and Robotic Marketer. Today again I have my colleague Michael Banks with Robotic Marketer, and we're just going to dive right into email marketing and the importance of it.
Yeah, so what exactly is email marketing, Morgan? What would you say to describe it?
Really, it's a messaging stream in a digital platform. That's the basic way to really describe it. Now, the purposes of it vary from client to client to consumer-based businesses as well as business-to-business companies. So with that, people use it to, one, nurture leads, and eventually with an end goal of converting sales and having those higher conversion rates. Another way is to really educate their current client base as well as their prospect base on industry or company updates, new products, new services that they're implementing and offering, as well as just changes in the industry or the economy that reflects that business process. Another way is to nurture maybe smaller accounts. I know I've worked with clients that can't cost effectively justify sending out their sales professionals all across the states to smaller sales accounts, but it's important to them that they're still nurturing those accounts as well as really building that consumer relationship. So you can really use it to nurture your current client base as well as generate leads, nurture leads, and then convert those into sales.
Yeah, that's great. And I think something that stood out to me about email marketing in general is that this is also a trend we're seeing that consumers desire. I read a study that said 54% of consumers want to receive email marketing campaigns from companies that they're interested in. Can you kind of comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So really email marketing was the first transfer over from traditional marketing to a digital platform.
Yeah.
So it's really the first avenue to communicate effectively, more cost effectively with your consumer and with your lead base. So with that, at the end of the day, it's not going anywhere. Businesses still primarily communicate through emails. There's statistics that show out there by the end of 2019, the average business user will receive 126 emails per day. So with that, we'll generate more of a discussion further in this discussion, but the importance of it, statistics don't lie. It's still the primary use of communication besides the phone that companies use internally to communicate within their staff as well as with their prospects and with their current customers.
Yeah, and I was reading some statistics too that were saying things like 8% of business professionals are accessing those direct email campaigns through their mobile. And so one of the things I think we need to kind of dive into is how do you design these EDM campaigns? How do you create something that someone actually wants to look at on their phone or on a laptop?
Well, so I will say there's a more recent statistic that IBM just published where it's actually 60% of clients and consumer-based are opening their emails via mobile devices. So it's really, really important that when you design and create the content and the overall look of an email campaign, you're not just looking for a desktop or a laptop computer, you're really making that user interface friendly for the consumer on their mobile device. I know me personally, as well as other businesses I've seen, present an email and you open it up on your device and it's just not mobile friendly. The information is all mixed up and it just doesn't present itself in a good format. So it's making sure that you know the right platforms to use to make sure that you're designing that in a mobile friendly arena. Really when you go and create content and the design for an email campaign, it's important that you're designing one for the desktop and making sure that either converts over seamlessly into a mobile device or you're designing it separately to utilize that platform.
Yeah, and I know that just depending on the software that you use too, some of that can be changes that are just completely automated. So if you utilize MailChimp, the same email campaign that you're sending out to laptops and desktops is going to be converted into mobile platform, which I think is really useful. Are there any softwares that you would recommend when people are thinking about EDMs?
I would just think, it all goes back to your specific resources allocated. There are smaller formats and platforms that allow for easy interface that are more affordable for the smaller to medium-sized businesses, as well as larger platforms that can really capitalize on the multi-formatted email campaigns. So it's more so about understanding your resources and what you're looking for. Yes, you could buy the maximum amount or enterprise level membership on a specific marketing automation platform, but are you going to utilize it to that full extent yet? You can start small and then build from there. It also, you need to look at what information you have to input into that platform.
Right.
So, there's some capabilities with sales companies in their CRM databases where they can export a list and put it into that email or that marketing automation system, and that's where it's going to be derived from, and that's who they're going to be targeting. Whereas some people might not have a CRM, say, in a very small business case. Okay, so how do you start to build that marketing automation platform? Well, my suggestion, and I've suggested this to clients, is go to your sales reps. What are your Focus 50 accounts? What are your Focus 100 accounts? Do you have the right contacts in there? Do you have an inside sales professional that can verify those contacts and then build the list organically? Whereas a business, you normally would have 50 Focus accounts or whatever that number may be. Go ahead and implement there and start targeting. It really is important. One tip that is vital to your email marketing strategy is segmenting the list. The more authentic and segmented that information is to the target audience, it helps with increases open rates because they feel like you're engaging with them directly. And that goes into, if your company offers various services and products, well, segment your database on, okay, what companies and what prospects really are allocated for this service and what are allocated for this product. And let's segment the list, and you can hit them with different products and services, but making sure you're not over touching with your clients, because at the end of the day, again, going back to that statistics, is if the average business worker or employee receives 126 emails a day, and that's just on average, who knows, depending on their position, that could increase greatly, then making sure that your information is efficient and touching them efficiently.
Yeah, and I think one thing we want to touch on today is great examples of companies that are really sending out these EDMs that are really just blowing things out of the water. I think one that I want to highlight with segmentation of your audience is actually a nonprofit called Charity Water. They have some EDMs that are displayed on HubSpot as examples, and one of the things that they do is when they have a project where they're building a well in a specific area overseas, they segment specific targets and specific audiences that have actually donated to that project. So it's very focused, in what they're doing. It's a very focused list.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because we didn't, to preview the audience, we didn't talk about this before, but I was one of those segmented audiences with Charity Water specifically, because I raised money for a well, and then I've continued to get updates on that specific well that the money was allocated for. So that is a great example. Non-for-profits really segment and understand where their money's coming from, and directing the emails and nurturing those accounts and those relationships through that. Another great example is any consumer-based company. From retail specifically, especially with AI and the way that the phone is always listening, and not to mention going back to that statistic of 60% of users are opening that email on their phone. It's catered to what have you talked about in the consumer market, what product, services, and then it's popping up on your phone. So there's so many components, and that's a high level email strategy, using a lot of different tools to implement, but you can start small and gauging your audience, identifying really, the pain points of what your audience in different segmented lists are going through, and then identifying either in subject lines, in the body of the email, making sure that you're talking to them directly.
Yeah, and let's break down like subject lines and things like that even further. What sort of language should we be using in these email marketing campaigns? What sort of length should these campaigns be?
Well, and so that can go a couple different ways. Specifically, there's plenty of various statistics that support a direct subject line is most successful. As a consumer, you want to know what the information is going to be in the copy of the email. We have that as a basic practice when I'm emailing with clients or with internal teams. Same goes for prospects. Another way you can transform that, though, is you can still be direct, but add a curiosity piece to it. So something that's going to engage the consumer or engage their interest, incentivize them in some way to actually open the email. Because, there's different components of the success of an email campaign. The first battle is just getting them to open it. Or really, let me take a step back. The first battle is getting it to their inbox and not their junk mail or their blocked mail, depending on their IT server. So one piece of that is personalized email addresses are received better than a generic company one or a X, Y, and Z fake email account. So start with a personalized name, somebody within the company, of an email address that those emails can be directed to per response. And then the second step is trying to get into those inboxes directly and having people actually click on the email. Because just because you got in an inbox doesn't mean they're going to click on the email.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point when you're talking about getting redirected into someone's spam, an email being opened but not really being perused at all. So what are some of those key metrics that we can use in email marketing to really gauge if our audience is actually responding to the content that we're sending?
Right, yeah, that's a great question. So, and I'll go back to answer the second part of your question that you just asked that I didn't touch on as far as copy goes. But, you have the open rates, you have the click-through rates, you have engagement rates, you have bounce rates. There's all these different metrics that really it's going to vary from company to company what's important to you. No matter what, an open rate is important. A click-through rate is important. Are they engaging with your email or are they just opening it? And really, I didn't mention a drop-off rate. If I'm sending out 1,000 emails or say even 100, if one person unsubscribes from my email list, I want to know why so I can, improve that. But there's always going to be a drop-off rate to some extent. So knowing, celebrate the good and just acknowledge where there's improvement that could be. Now, if I have 100 people on my email list and say 40 or 35% drop off, I need to look and see what my message is. Is it valuable to the consumer? Because at the end of the day, we're as a company spending time on putting together this email campaign. That takes time. We want to make sure that we're using it wisely, as well as we want to be respectful of the consumer's time of reading the email. So going back to your question before on length and what kind of things would you put in an email, it changes depending on, is this going to be a first email attention getter campaign, and then are you going to implement a drip campaign following it to nurture that same concept and subject? With that, it could be 2 to 3 paragraphs of value information. I would recommend 2 to 3 sentences in the beginning, maybe a full bulleted points, and then encompassing ending sentence of why they should engage with you. It's really important to implement call to action statements. So that could be a white paper download, an ebook download of best practices or tips that you'd recommend for their industry or for your product. And it could be a video. There's a statistic out there that says that implementing a video into your email campaign could increase click-through engagement by 300%. That's huge. We talked about last week video marketing and how engagement rates are so high. So all the different ways we can implement video marketing. Email campaigns is one way to do that. But the real important component of email campaigns is don't waste consumers' time. Figure out information that you can give that isn't going to hurt your deal, your prospect, or your service that you may be providing, but give them a taste. Give them something that's valuable information that they can bring back to their business or to their practice and their workflow, and provide them a taste of, the full secret, and then give them a reason why to engage with you, and that's incentivizing for them to actually purchase your service or schedule a call or get a meeting with you to really buy your product or your service and get the whole component and all the answers.
Yeah, and I definitely think we live in this age of immediacy where instant gratification is really important. The visuals that you include in your email campaigns and email marketing is going to be crucial.
Yeah.
And so I would even say look at how some of these larger companies, larger corporations like Starbucks, or earlier we mentioned Charity Water, how they're designing these campaigns, and reflect your paragraphs, how short they are, how brief your sentences are, and the amount of visuals that you have based off of those campaigns.
Right. Well, and it goes back to, at the end of the day, no matter what, know your audience, as well as, there are best practices and statistics that support different strategies in email marketing, but it's so important to continue to A/B test. Giving your product, giving your service is a variance deliverable versus also, your specific audience. What are they clicking on? What times of day are they looking at their email? It is I would say consistently proven that Tuesdays are the best days for email campaign, but the midweek is where people are most engaged with their email and their workflow. Also with that, 82% of workers are saying that they're checking their email outside of work. I know that I do on a frequent basis. I'm checking my email constantly. The average consumer, just say 82% of people are doing that. So A/B testing could be, yes, you want to keep your business subject matter emails during the workday, but why not try an evening or early morning outside of work hours to just test your audience and see where they're engaging. You know, there are best practices, but again, it's catered to your company and your audience.
Yeah, and as long as your cadence is consistent, your interval is consistent, you're going to be able to get the feedback that you need if that's actually working.
Right, and I want to point on consistency too. Cadence is a really big component of any content or any marketing tactic that you do. So it's really important to, if you start something, continue it. So maybe you start small, doing an email campaign once a quarter, and then you move to once a month. And then you realize your capabilities and your resources if you could do a weekly campaign. Again, it could be a big campaign that you're introducing a new product or a service or an industry announcement, and then you're drip feeding once a week and nurturing that campaign. When you drip feed, those are smaller emails, more of attention to recap and refer back to that original email campaign. But it's so important to continue to nurture your current accounts, your prospects and leads, continuing that relationship building process.
Yeah, and I would say one of the really last things we should touch on is this idea of conversions. Are your call to actions in your emails leading to click-throughs that lead to sales conversions? Because ultimately that's one of the most important things that we're doing with these campaigns is we want to see people respond to action. So I think a big way we can tell if engagement is actually working with the users that are viewing these emails is are our conversions being completed?
Well, and I think that goes back to customizing your call to actions pertinent to your business. So if people going and cycling back to your website is important, then put that in your call to action statement. If you are trying to generate more leads for your sales representatives, then have a phone number to a scheduling calendar or an employee, whether that's a digital email calendar like a Calendly or something like that, or an actual phone number that they can call and schedule an appointment with your sales rep, so that you're starting to see the cycle. You know, companies measure customer journeys, as well as the lead cycle and how many steps it takes for those conversion rates from a lead to an actual sale and return. So this can be, and this should be, an important step in that cycle where it's low cost, very effective, nurturing that lead, and ideally getting you to that conversion step so that your sales rep or professional can convert that lead into a final sale.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else?
I was going to say that those are all great responses, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you again for listening to us. Again, we are just trying to add value and give you some tips every week on different ways that different practices and tips that you should be implementing into your marketing strategy, as well as just allocating your resources and really moving forward with a plan and with insight. If you have additional topics or questions about marketing and implementation and resources and how to just get started with your marketing strategy, please leave them in the comments below. We'll continue to build content around what you guys' feedback is. So please feel free to just let us know what you want to hear. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next week.